Okay, here goes second to the last, or the third section in Unit 1. This is going to be scientific method. And in this scientific method, I'm also going to tell you that the scientific method, the way it's taught in middle and high school, maybe even at college, is probably not the way real science is done. And I'm going to give you a link to a video that's going to talk about the scientific method and how it sucks. We do have to have a process, but this process is dynamic, where you actually see the scientific method going from an observation to a question, to research, to hypothesis, to experiment, data, and then conclusion. And this is actually, not even sure what language, but this is the same set of posters I have in the back of my classroom, where we do some research. We think of explanations, we plan, we experiment, we collect data, and then we come up with a conclusion. And the process actually looks very much like that: purpose, hypothesis, experiment, data, analysis, conclusion. And the problem is that it seems to be very linear. It also, it's not dynamic. You don't actually learn anything from it until you get to the end. But the way science really works is we come up with ideas because we actually make observations of things, and we come up with ideas that may explain it. We can design an experiment. If we don't think that thing actually explains it, we can go back and change our purpose, and we can actually, once we get the experiment, we can find that our hypothesis may change, and then we actually get to the data analysis, and we find out that our hypothesis was not incorrect, and we can go back and we can, from any place in this process, we can go to any place else. There's the link. So if you're looking at the PowerPoint, you can see that. Or you could probably just type in, I think that actually the link is scientific method is crap, but you can see it that way. So the scientific method, the way it's set up, we have a purpose. The purpose is the question, or what we're actually going to do in the experiment. If you take a look down here, we've got some plants. I'm not exactly sure which side is which. I'm going to assume this is the control and this is the experimental group. Come up with a hypothesis, which is an educated guess. A lot of people call it if and then statements, but it doesn't really have to be written that way, and it isn't in real science. And then we design an experiment, which is going to be structured to test this hypothesis, which is actually made using the question or the purpose you had. And then we're going to design a controlled experiment that only looks at one variable per experiment. If we look at more than one, we don't know which one actually did the change, or if the change actually was working by both of them. So we have a scientific investigation where only one variable is changed. Then we move into data analysis, where we do data tables, or we can actually do graph, which is a visual presentation, or visual presentation works of a data table. And this is so we can actually look for patterns, or we can look for trends. And then we have a conclusion, which is going to support or reject the hypothesis. And it does do both. The experiment may actually say that your hypothesis is not correct, but you got to be able to back it up with data. This is the design diagram, experimental design diagram, where you put in a title, you put in a hypothesis, you put in an IV, or the dry, which is a dependent, I don't remember what this is, but I'll put it up there next. But it's dependent y-axis, and it is responsive, probably responsive. And this one is actually manipulated. It is the, not the dependent, but the, and actually I've got those in the wrong box, don't I? So that should actually be mixed, and this should be dry, because this is the x-axis, and that is the independent, and this is the y-axis, which is the dependent, and this is dependent, which is dependent, and this is responsive, which is dependent, and this one is manipulated, the one you knew you were going to change, and on the x-axis. Then we have a control group. This is the group that we're actually going to do the experiment on. Experimental group we're going to do the experiment on. We have a control group, the one that we don't. We have constants, that things that we're not going to change in the experiment, because remember, we're only going to do one. And repeated trials, you do as many of those as you possibly can. Okay, so title. In effect, you're looking at your IV variable versus your DV variable. Your hypothesis is supposed to be specific. It's supposed to be based on research. It's this always, and I don't like this, always written as an if-then statement. I don't agree with that. Plants that get no sunlight, they'll die because because plants need sunlight to photosynthesize, which makes their food. And this has a testable prediction. Either they live or they don't. So, variable manipulated, or the one that you changed. I like to actually say it's the one you knew before you ran the experiment. You're going to water the plants. You're going to give the plants light. You're going to give them too much fertilizer. You're going to make it too cold for them, whatever. And this is the variable that responds during the experiment. This is the one you actually measure during the experiment. Experimental group is the group that's being tested. Control group is the one that's not altered. So if you're actually going to use water, you would water one set of plants and not water the other. Watering is the one you're going to be testing to see if the plants grow better, or sunlight or whatever. Your constants, these are the things that stay the same in the experiment. So same size container, same type of soil, same distance from light if you're going to do water. If you're going to control the water in one, you may only give a normal amount of water for one set of plant, and you may give it more water or less water for your control group. Repeated trial, you want to do those as many as possible. Usually 3 is what's considered it, but you really want to do as many as you can. And the conclusion, the hypothesis is supported or rejected, and then again, that's based on data. So you look at your data and you say, yes, my hypothesis was supported because, or you look at your data and say, no, my hypothesis was not supported because. And that's the end of that one, because this actually starts 1D. Thanks for stopping by.